I recently had a meeting with one of our key clients. They're a large food manufacturer. And as we sat down, he said to me that they'd just lost their major shareholder without any communication. They just dumped their stock overnight. And this came as quite a shock to that company. And the following day, the CEO called up the investments firm and said, what could possibly have gone wrong? And the investment company, which is a large international fund, said, sorry, we probably should have talked to you, but unfortunately, your efforts towards ESG have not been strong enough. We are directing our funds to companies who are. What would be the effect on your business in the event that a significant shareholder or investors or customers lost faith in your contribution to the environment? One of my other friends is Richard White. He's MD of WiseTech. He's one of Australia's richest men. He recently suggested to me that this was exactly going to be the case for his business as well if he wasn't to get out in front of the curve. And so the early bird catches the worm. By being a company who is doing it, whilst others are not, the investors will direct their funds away from those who aren't into your company. So this is both a global and a national situation. And it will not only affect the major corporations, but because of Scope 3, as Jane mentioned, Coles is looking at this, this is causing and will cause an indirect effect on anyone who supplies many of the listed and most major corporations. In another recent conversation, obviously you can tell I like having conversations, a lot of talking, with a different client, it was a lot more positive. And this company, a small manufacturer who supplies one of Australia's largest retailers, we were installing their solar at that time. And our solar system was going to produce about 40% of their needs. And at the same time, they were going for a new tender to increase their supply to the retail chain. Now, their solar was worth about $300,000, but under our PPA, we were installing it for free. But the interesting thing was that the contract, the tender that they were submitting for was worth many, many millions of dollars. And now their chances of winning that increased significantly because of their commitment and action on ESG. So not only was the investment that they were making in solar going to be obviously cash flow positive, but it was a significantly faster return indirectly because of their customers' decision making. There is no company in Australia that we can't have the same effect for. The only challenge really is when, and today's talk and what I'm seeing is risk. John mentioned how slow we're moving towards this. Time and supply chain risk is my topic. So let's discuss the effect of targets on your business and our supply chain. My business's core purpose is to improve our customers' business. We do that with solar and battery, FCAS, spot market arbitrage. We're getting into biogas and waste to energy now. Energy bill restructuring. Basically, energy, think smart, think energy. We can help you, but there are limits to our ability to scale when the demand comes on. And so I'm going to look at three particular situations. The first one being true and net zero targets, putting pressure on the market, step changes in the market that will influence price, and a concept called demand pull inflation, which is our ability to ramp supply chain to meet the demands of the market and that effect on price. Companies are making a lot of statements, and 2020 was a great year to make a very bold statement about what you were going to achieve by 2030. That was 10 years away, it was a decade. But as we slowly, or not so slowly, approach 2030, it's getting a little bit awkward. And Bridget, I can certainly empathise with the challenge in the steel industry. You're making targets, and it's a lot easier to promise a target and say, we're going to achieve a certain milestone by a certain date, but you actually have to do something. It's getting awkward because there's not enough happening. So I would suggest if you are making targets, it's a lot easier to promise a mix of targets. Just say we can do about 30% on site, which is true zero, and making up for the remainder with certificates. The problem is that certificates are on the nose. Consumers and investors don't really like certificates. And that's unfortunately because greenwashing, spurious methods of creating these certificates has devalued the moral integrity of certificates in many cases. This is a problem. So I would suggest you can do more for yourself. You are better off if you do more for yourself with more secure, long-term, known price and supply of your energy, if you can do it for yourself. As we have the relentless march of time, and we kind of touched on this in other talks, towards these promised dates of 25, 27, 2030, we have all these public announcements, and it seems to me we're all a little bit like my high school experience where we're leaving the project till the night before. And red is the trajectory I think that we're on. Blue is what I would like to be on, but I think green is the most likely scenario for most businesses in Australia, where we have a fairly last-minute reaction to, we've got to get something sorted out because our promises are not going to be realised. The question I have is, are there enough certificates to meet the market demand in 2030? And if demand increases significantly, what happens to the price? The second point we need to address is when there are going to be, meaningful step changes in energy supply and price, and just as importantly, more importantly, energy security. We just had Liddell Power Station coming off, and I love to see the headlines, there's been no effect on the national energy market. No, of course not. The spot market didn't respond immediately because it's winter, we're low demand, we can lose generation. There's still plenty of solar and wind right now, but let's fast forward to when it starts to heat up again. How are we going to make up for 1.6 gigawatts of that missing generation? One of our energy brokers, Energy Action, passed on this graph. This was the immediate response on retail energy contracts. So these were issued last week, and they can already see a bit of an uplift in forward-going retail contracts. So what we're seeing in the spot is differing from what we're seeing in retail. And I would suggest that this small price hike is the canary in the coal mine. Pun intended, every step of the way. Anyone know what Australia's daytime load maxes out at? No. 25 gigs. So Australia national energy market varies between 21 to 25 gigawatts. This is from OpenM, awesome platform. You can see where your energy is coming from at any time. Now, Liddell was only 1.6 gigawatts, and in the next 3 years, Eraring Power Station is due to come off, which is 2.9 gigawatts. 25% of New South Wales energy will be coming off. And this is the effect that the national energy market has been having on price. Now, I'm not decrying the need to shut down coal, by the way. I'm a big fan. But it just shows you the effect that these step changes are going to have. Does anyone know how much solar we installed last year? About 5 gigawatt over the course of a year. Now, that means that New South Wales probably got about 1 to 1.5 gigawatts installed. And that includes the dodgy systems that my competitors installed that won't work in the next couple of years. However, for every coal-fired gigawatt that comes off the market, we need to be installing 4 gigawatts of solar and probably about 10 gigawatt hours of storage. It's only $14 billion. I could do it myself, but we need to really make some serious investment. So these are when coal-fired power stations are being shut down, and they are going to have some meaningful step changes in our market. Going back to how we use energy, we need to insert 4.5 gigawatts of magical power generation in the next 3 years. Demand pull inflation. This is going to be a major effect on cost, and it's going to affect everyone, but particularly retail price and your ability to achieve your targets. This is going to push up retail contracts. Solar rooftop and battery will become more attractive because of it, even though it's already attractive. And the other demand pull inflation will be caused by people grabbing certificates to satisfy the 2030 goals. This is what we have taken, well, since I started 16 years ago in solar. I've installed most of that. That's Australia's solar production. But what happens if we need to increase it by 20% in the next 7 years or 40%? How are we going to do that? It's taken 16 years to get there. We need to do a lot more. If we start now, I think we can do it. So my message to you today is don't repeat the mistakes that you have been making since high school. Join the future of energy. It looks like this. Awesome, beautiful looking people. And maybe save a few canaries. But just in case, keep an ear out for my next talk, which will be around energy security, critical for business.